Welcome back to another episode of Winning Through Culture. I am very excited today to be with three very special guests. September is Hispanic Heritage Month, and today we're going to be conversing with some dynamic leaders in the Charlotte Latinx community through ALPFA. So before I get started and make introductions, I'll talk a little bit about ALPFA. Who is ALPFA? ALPFA is the Association of Latino Professionals for America. It was the first national Latino professional association in the United States, established in Los Angeles back in 1972. Through its 51-year history, it has experienced steady growth and consistent value to its members. ALPFA continues to build on its proud legacy and its mission, which is to empower and develop Latino men and women of leaders of character for our nation in every sector of the global economy. Currently serve over 116,000 professional and student members across the country. They offer 50,000 paid summer internships through hundreds of Fortune 1000 corporate partners, and they work tirelessly with a number of businesses and companies to help hiring and developing Latino talent. So we're going to talk a lot about ALPFA today, but let me do some quick introductions. And what I think I'll do, since there are four of us total, which is a fun way to do a podcast, I'll ask each of you to maybe give a little bit of background on who you are, and then we'll kind of launch into a discussion around ALPFA. So, Cheri Lujan, we will start with you. Welcome to Winning Through Culture. Tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. Thanks for having us. We're so excited to be here. We really appreciate it. So, as you mentioned, my name is Cheri. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I've been in this area since 2005. Grew up in California, but moved here. When I moved here, I launched my professional career and I worked in insurance industry for over 15 years. After that, I joined a consulting firm, one of the big four, and I worked there as a consultant for a couple years, focused on transformations and change management. And I currently work at a company called EXL, leading change management for their property and casualty insurance arm. Married, I have 4 children. Teenagers. They will all be in high school this year, so that's exciting.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And I'm just excited to be here. From an ALPFA standpoint, ALPFA is near and dear to my heart. I'm the ALPFA Charlotte chapter co-president. And so we are, as you mentioned, a nonprofit, the largest in the US, which is excited. And myself and my colleagues here, along with about 10 others of us, lead the Charlotte chapter. And so little bit about me, excited to talk about ALPFA, what it means to me and share with the community. But before we get into that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves as well.
Thank you, Cheri. So Karen Bardales, please tell us a little bit about you, and thank you for being with us today.
Yes, no, Tim, thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here today. Let's see, following Cheri's comment, right? So I appreciate you having some of our board members join you this morning. I've been in Charlotte for about 9 years now. I started my banking career very, very early. I won't age myself there, but I've had the opportunity of working in, different types of organizations within the banking system. I started in consumer banking in retail, and then I spent the last 15 years really in the commercial space. I'm a commercial banker. I've had the opportunity to work for organizations up in New York City, Washington, D.C. And like I said, for the last 9 years, I've been here in Charlotte. I work for Bank of America, and I support a business portfolio here with middle market and small business banking customers, as well as, taking a different role in our different hats, right? Being an advocate for the Latino Hispanic community and pushing advocacy, empowerment, and education. So very happy to be here. I have 2 young girls. One is 12 and the other one is 8. And Javi, who's Mexican, and I'm from Peru.
All right. Well, thank you, Karen. And Mauricio Tandazzo. Mauricio, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Thank you, Tim, for the kind introductions to all of us in the chapter and what we do for ALPFA and for our community. I am originally from Ecuador. I moved to the States back in 1999. I lived in Jersey, New York for about 20 years before I was able to get the opportunity to join Bank of America, and then I moved to Charlotte. I've been in finance since then, but I've done every other job under the sun, from Uber driver to construction and anything in between. So it's been a very crazy life. But here in Charlotte, I found a lot of inspiration. ALPFA, I met the organization when I was still in college. And it's through those connections that I was able to get the role at Bank of America. And it's through Alpha that I was able to meet my soon to be wife. We're getting married in September.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that is exciting. Alpha is a full 360 for me and cannot be any more grateful for what the organization has done for me in my life.
Oh, that is awesome. That's a great story. That's a very good story. And I'm sure you'll tell us a little more about that. So maybe we can start with, and I'll start with you, Cheri. What does being a part of Alpha mean to you, and how has it impacted you professionally and personally?
Yeah. I love this question. And it's so unique to hear everyone's different story because everyone has a story who's a part of the organization. So for me, being a part of Alpha, it's my Alpha Familia. That is the people who I've grown to know, love, understand, at times argue with, always healthy though. But, it's a group of individuals who truly care. We care for each other, we care for our communities, we care for the members that we serve. And for me, it's having a group of individuals who help uplift each other, who help each other grow. We learn together, we serve together, we grow together. And we do that through sharing of knowledge, sharing of information and resources and networks. And you talked a little bit about Alpha's mission in the intro, which is all true. And it's a great part of our history. But Alpha is also our purpose. So our purpose is connecting Latino leaders for impact. And that's something we really live into in the Charlotte chapter. So connecting our communities, business leaders, connecting members of the community, no matter what industry you're in or what you do, and our Alpha members to make impacts in the lives of everyone that we serve. And so for me, that's what Alpha is. Alpha's always been there. As much as I serve, these are all volunteer roles. We do it because we have a passion for it. We do it because it's important to us. And so I found as much as I can give to Alpha, I receive even more than I can imagine in return. And so the types of people I've met and the relationships and the mentorship is something that goes far beyond just a single event or a question on the phone. And so I would even attribute a lot of my career growth to Alpha in terms of helping me gain experience and skills and leading a P&L and all the different things that I may or may not have had the opportunity to do in my role. And our CEO, Damian Rivera, he's also fantastic and he lives every moment of what he speaks. And so I always like to tell the story that, he always mentions when he's talking, like, if you need anything ever, just text me, call me, I'm there for you. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put this to the test. And before I moved to one of the big four consulting firms, I texted him because he used to work at one of them. And I said, hey, I have this interview for this job. Any chance you could spare a few moments and talk to me about your experience? And he was more than happy to help. So he helped me prep for the interview. He talked to me about it. He warned me of things to expect. He talked to me about how to succeed. And not only did I end up getting the position, it was a huge impact in my life. We grew closer, but also it helped my family out. It was a 35% raise from what I was making. And that's huge. And that just doesn't happen by chance. And so I attribute a lot of that to experiences that I've gained through Alpha, but also to individuals like Damien and like the people on the phone who support, uplift, and help me get there. So just I have more that I could possibly express in terms of gratitude for the organization. But that's a little bit about my Alpha story and what being a part of Alpha has meant to me.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So Karen, let's hear your story and how Alpha has impacted and what it's meant to you.
I'm sure Damian is like really wanting and hoping to hear us, right? Because it is so true, right? What this organization has done for us professionally, I couldn't agree more. For me, I have been with Alpha for years. It drills me back all the way to my college, right? To the student chapters where I first came in, right? As a Latina trying to understand what education am I going to as a professional career. And listen, Alpha gave me that opportunity, right? How do you build on your resume, right? How to prepare yourself, right? How to talk, how to find a mentor. What does that mean? It connected me to my role for Citibank, right? And that's how I got connected to leadership. That's how I got into Citibank. And that took me over to New York, right? But when I was in New York, I wasn't alone. I had my Alpha Familia, right? So we had also our Alpha partners over there, which I became partner with. And it just gave me such an ample opportunity to network. And talk about a story coming back to Charlotte. I just started with Bank of America about a little bit over a year ago. But I will say, right, I knew so many leaders and I knew so many of the internal community because of Alpha, right? A lot of our board members are from Bank of America. And so when I was making those decisions or, should I be, shifting to Bank of America, I had a lot of guidance internally and I couldn't have not done it without our members from our board and the support of our leadership had I not known about Alpha. So it has been, again, for my career, for the growth, I think it's been a tremendous experience, and also getting that and taking that back, right? Doing the same thing for all the students, right? And being an advocate for them and for the growth as well, so that we can continue to grow our community.
Very impactful stories. This is very exciting to hear. And now, Mauricio, you're going to tell us, not only have you met your spouse, but how has Alpha impacted you beyond that?
Well, I think that Cheri and Karen have given already like really personal descriptions of how Alpha just impacts in such a positive way to everybody, not only as part of the Alpha organization, but everybody that works with them, for them, and that receives the benefits, right? I think one of the craziest things that I ever did was go to that convention in 2017. And I have never been in a convention of professional, Latino professionals trying to get ahead, trying to do better, be better, help others. And that was just such an inspiring thing that I don't think I would not go to one unless like forced to, because it's extremely inspiring. And through the college years, because like I told you earlier, I did a whole bunch of odd jobs through my life, but I did do a lot of project management and advertising in New Jersey, New York. But I noticed that that was not the path that I wanted to take. And I went to public school in New York, Baruch College, and they have a really strong chapter, Alpha chapter. And it was by one of those coincidences, this girl that was also Ecuadorian, that is part of the membership committee, she said, "Hey, I have this thing. Do you want to come with me? You need to get involved. It would be nice." And that's actually where I met my wife in that leadership development session. And things just started like compounding to each other because the help just kept coming to you, because the biggest driver is you do this because you care for the people that is around you. And the payback is that seeing someone else get that promotion, that resume is so polished that is 10 offers on the table after they go through interviews, right? And that cannot be described really fully unless you are living it through an Alpha convention. And I think that's one of the most inspiring things that I've ever gone through. And I'm just forever going to be a part of Alpha.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you guys are all in for sure.
Yeah, the long run.
And the long run and helping the next generation. And so, Winning Through Culture, this podcast is really about helping businesses, leaders, business owners become impactful and relevant and create healthy culture. So let's kind of pivot now a little bit to what you all believe an organization needs to do well to support Latino leaders. So Karen, I'll start with you. Again, you've talked about the different experiences you've had in the corporate world. Alpha is a great organization. It's made huge impact for all of you, but taking that into business, this podcast being listened to by business owners, what do I need to know as a business owner to really support the Latino leaders in my organization?
Yes. And just like that, right? So I said, I just not, and I think when I hear some other of my fellows working for Bank of America, 20 years, 15 years, and here I am 1 year in, and that's what fueled me, right? Knowing an organization that really supports that inclusivity, that really supports that, diversity. I couldn't speak more with my direct reports, right? My regional reports, Jane Navaria, who I used to work with in another organization that now she's here with Bank of America, Les Lembergs, who supports a lot not only the Latino, but also the African American minority here, and how do we build that community. Our head of business banking for our entire line of business for Bank of America is Raul Anaya, right? So he's again, like a leader that really is trying to push a key support for not only our teammates, but only for our clients, nationally, globally. And so for me, it's working for an organization that has different resources. We have OLA here, which is our business resource group, which in our Charlotte market just turned 20 years, right, this year. And so we've had great success, not only internally, but externally. Internally, mentoring programs, right? How do we advocate for our talent? How do we grow? How do we push for education And then how do we task them to have access to other leaders in our organization? We also have external groups that we support here with Bank of America that support Latinos and Latino business owners, right? We've been doing this for years. And so when the opportunity came, and with ALPFA, by the way, we've been supporting ALPFA for 13 years. And so for me, it was really, like not even thinking about it, right? I want to go for an organization that supports the Latino talents, that can advocate for you, that can help you grow on a professional level. I can tell you within a year, I'm already taking lead and I'm part of the Hispanic Latino Leadership Council, which our whole role is exactly doing that, right? How do we lift our talent and then how do we help our community, right? Different organizations in just the Charlotte market, make sure that we advocate, we do programming, financial education and financial literacy to be able to uplift, in our Charlotte market and in the community.
That's awesome. That's a lot of intentionality and making sure that there are leaders in place that look like the people they're leading. So that's quite a good story. Mauricio, how do you see the same topic of organizations? What can they do to support Latino leaders?
Piggyback a little bit on what Karen said, right? It all starts at the head. That most of business owners, whether small or big, there has to be a realization that Latinos as a demographic is growing exponentially, is becoming the bedrock of the growth of the U.S. economy, and ignoring the capabilities and the future growth that comes with such a demographic, it is detrimental to their own opportunities for growth as a company, as entrepreneurs, as a business owner, and also as clients, right? And you need to be able to connect culturally with your clients. You need to be able to make your company a representative of the people you serve. That's something that is very ingrained in companies like Bank of America, for example, where from consumer banking, that's what they do. They try to reflect really as much as they can, right? Because they cannot be perfect, but as much as they can, the clients, by bringing up people, helping them develop, and including all the diversity there is in this country. And it's not really handouts, right? Because I want to be careful that it's not we're forcing a numbers to increase because Latinos are here. It's actually finding the gems within the Latino community and saying, hey, we can help you grow if you chose to do that. And that leadership needs to exist everywhere. And I think that a lot of companies or corporations have taken a good step in that direction, but there's so much work to do. But it all starts with leadership.
Yes, it's a common theme. And I call it a hand up, not a handout, a hand up, creating access.
I really like that. And building on what Mauricio said, we leverage some of this data and information that's publicly available at ALPFA to kind of drive some of our programming and share information with companies and sponsors that support ALPFA Charlotte. And so one example is recently, a few months ago, there was a study done by the Latino Health and Culture Department within UCLA. And so it was published, and you can look at this report. It's called the Metro Latino GDP report. And what they did is they studied based on publicly available information from a national level, and then they broke down how Latinos are contributing to the GDP at a local level as well. And so there's 10 cities that are the top 10 major cities contributing to GDP from a Latino standpoint, and Charlotte is one of them. And so when we're able to have companies understand what's happening and how Latinos are contributing to GDP and even support funding some of these studies and sharing information, I think it helps out their culture, because it's more than just like, yes, it's the good thing to do, it's the right thing to do, but you can then tie back down the investment you're making in our community back to the bottom line. And so I think there's some stats in the study that were pretty alarming to me in a good way. And it was shocking. I just didn't realize kind of what was happening. But when I read the report, I was shocked. And so obviously, if we have high GDP, then that's economic growth, and that results in higher wages, better standards of living, et cetera. And so when you look at it from a national level, Latino GDP contribution is 2.8 trillion. And this is looking back in 2020. I mean, that's a big number. And it's growing much faster, than the population. It's growing 2.6 times faster than the rest of the population. And 3/4 of that growth comes from, I mentioned 10 states, North Carolina being one of them. And if you think about what that really means, if you look at the world, the Latino GDP would be the 5th largest in the whole world.
Economy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so third fastest growing, just behind China and India, and fifth total largest. So, I mean, that's huge. And so if you think about that, and what does that mean to businesses, and what does that mean to their customer base and the people they're serving? If you want to know them, if you want to understand them, if you want to have your employee base mirror that, I think understanding some of that and how that's happening and what are those root causes and what does it mean and how do you take advantage of that to help contribute to the success of your company, to your customers, and to mirror that, understanding some of those stats and what that means in your local community, I think is super important. So like when we look at Charlotte specifically, there's like 5 sectors. So finance and real estate, professional services, construction, government, and wholesale trade. That's really in Charlotte specifically where the economic growth is coming from, to the tune of 12.9 billion from the Latino community. And so it makes sense because we are a finance city, so that those numbers make sense. But I think what also is interesting is that you can see the diversity of where the growth is coming from. And so when you look at GDP, or whether you even look at like homeowner growth, from 2016 to 2018, Latino homeowners increased by over 42%. So in that same time frame, if you look at non-Latino homeowners, that was only a 13% growth compared to 42% growth. You can see there's a lot of great things happening in our community, and we're contributing to society pretty significantly. And so if companies take the time to think about that and understand, they can actually not only support the community and the culture because of it's the right thing to do and because, people are asking for it, but they can probably tie it back to how it'll improve their bottom line and help meet their shareholder needs if they're a public company, or their customer needs.
That's a compelling story, Cheri. What was the name of that report? I'd love to include it in our show notes.
We are happy to share that with you. That was actually one that was also sponsored by Bank of America. But those numbers are incredible, right? If you start thinking about it, we're the fifth largest, right? On GDP, if you think about it, we'll be the fifth largest country. That report also shared something about early education, right? So how many students are going into kindergarten? I believe it's 1 out of 10. So it's like somewhere along 30% of Charlotte market, right? Think about that. Kids that are going into kindergarten are Latino. And so, again, those trends are there and it's happening. And again, to Cheri's point and to Mauricio's points, what are we doing on our side, right, to be able to continue to push that and, deliver that, growth and deliver that responsible growth for our customers, for our people, our community.
Yeah, that is very compelling. So obviously, ALPFA is an amazing organization. You guys have been greatly enriched through your experience there. I also have to imagine you've faced challenges and obstacles along the way. Maybe, Mauricio, we could start with you. I mean, what are some of the challenges or obstacles you've had to overcome, and how has ALPFA helped you navigate that?
You will tell me at the end of this podcast what is your perception of whether or not I'm very outspoken or good at communication or not. But I can tell you that about 8 years ago, there was no way you can have me talk in public. I will shake and shiver and sweat buckets because it was horrifying. ALPFA broke that for me. The other thing that it was very hard for me to do is think through the perspective of other people. I'm very process driven. I like things in steps. I like things in sequence. It makes my brain predict the future because I know the steps, right? So it's easier for me to prevent things from happening or helping them develop if that is the case. The exposure to so many talented people around me at the bank with organizations like ALPFA, the people that I've met in networking at school, it has just allowed me to see life in a different way. I remember there was the first conference. I didn't know because the background where I come from, my family, there are no one in a corporate job. It's all business owners, small shops, small mom and pop shops and stores. So there is no guidance, no pathway for me to understand the steps needed to perform well in an interview, because what is an interview? That's not something that we did, right? And no one in my family did, right?
Started a business. Nobody interviews you.
Exactly. So then all that was painful, scary, but ALPFA and the people that I've met through ALPFA just kindly helped me every step along the way. And by no means I'm an expert in any of those topics, because as Cheri can attest, right, her experience, Karen's as well, the opportunity to learn from your mistakes and not being judged by it is one of the best things that we can do here. the opportunity of leadership, of leading projects, leading programs, and helping out, that exposes you and forces you to break the seals on things that you otherwise would have never done because, at least at work, right? There's a limit of things that you can do wrong before somebody knocks on your door and says, hey, like you really need to step it up because we're not paying you for all of this, right? And so Alpha allows you to polish those skills and learn. And the feedback is immediate from the teammates. Like Cheri said, right? We've had arguments. We don't agree on things, on dates, on the steps for the programs or details and things like that. But we are open to communication. And that is something that it was just not part of my natural self years ago.
So you really were impacted in a very significant way. Sounds like overcoming some challenges of your upbringing.
Personal challenges, lots of them.
Yeah. Cheri.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that question. A few things that come to mind from people that have talked to me. One challenge is for many people, English isn't people's first language that are part of Alpha. This is not the case for me, but that's a very difficult thing. If English is not your first language, but yet you're in the workforce where companies are expecting you to be able to, whether you're bilingual or not, if the primary language is English at the company, but it's not your first language, there could be a barrier and that could create perceptions, that maybe are not true about you. And so helping people through some of those challenges, is another great aspect about Alpha. The other thing is a lot of our members are first generation college students. And so that's one thing that is true for me. And so not having the access to the information or knowledge or resources on how do you apply for college and what about, when you leave college, what do you do to get into the professional workforce or start your own company? Because if you don't have family who's made that transition or you don't have friends or people, then what are you to do? And so one thing that I love is that from a professional chapter standpoint, Alpha has professional chapters and student chapters. And we partner very closely with those student chapters, which are colleges, groups of little Alpha chapters within different colleges, and help them start thinking about what should that transition look like and what do you need to think about and how do you prepare and what options are out there and how do we get them ready and to get several offers post-college. And so, those are some of the challenges I think that are specific to our community, just a couple examples. And then we're really focused on helping our members overcome some of those challenges.
That's great. That's very, very rich. Karen?
Gosh, when I think about, like I said, I have been with Alpha for many years, right? Even from college, right?
From college,
college to now professional, and the things that Alpha has done for me on a professional level right now, right? There's some things that we started to talk about, even in our group right now. And Alpha is doing it through education, right? We have this Alpha Plus that our members can log in there and have information on how to create wealth, right? That's one of the things that we're trying to tell our, our members in our group. For me also, as I think about it, it's also the connectivity, right? You guys have heard about Mauricio and how he went to convention and how, he got his career. Same thing with Cheri when she's, started to go into another company, being able to access, our leadership team, be able to consult with them, to be able to have some mentorship. But then also, I think the power of the network and our sponsors, right? Palora being one of them, right? Like the opportunity to be able to hire some of our professionals or students, being able to give us that access. And so I am always thankful about not only for what Alpha is doing, but what also other organizations that are really big contributors and partners with us to be able to support our professional network as well as our student network. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I was going to touch on that. I'll come back to that topic in a little bit. Just listening to you is very inspiring, and there's so much to take from this conversation. Obviously, the importance of leadership, which is a reoccurring theme in this podcast. Everything rises and falls on leadership. The importance of community, and the importance not only of community, but a community that supports one another and lifts each other up. And then the importance of helping each successive generation open the door to more opportunities. It's really, really, really powerful. And I've obviously known about Alpha, but to really hear the impact of Alpha is just really, truly inspiring. And I appreciate it. Kind of a last question really is, what advice would you guys give leaders or business owners, entrepreneurs about how to best support the Latinx community here in Charlotte overall.
Yeah. I'll give you 3 simple things.
Okay. We like 3 simple things in this podcast. That's perfect.
I'll say talk to people, just like you're doing. The Calora group has been fantastic supporter. One, you're talking to our community, you partner with ALPFA, you show up at our events, and you find out what's important and what people need. So I would say ask the community what they need and want, and then what can you do to help contribute to that. The second is support local. So local businesses, whenever you can, if you have an event, what can we do to support local businesses and companies, and how can we boost them and provide them, whether it's buying from them or providing resources to them or advertising them. And then lastly, I'll say get involved. And so the more involved you can be, I think there's something to understand and recognize something is important, but to actually give your time to something and just show up and be there, I think that's a big thing that just about anyone can do. So those are my 3 pieces of advice.
Time, talent, and presence.
There you go.
Karen, would you add anything to that?
I would completely agree again. And then just be involved. That is so important for us, right? If there's a mentoring program in any of these local organizations, be part of it, right? Be part of it, be supportive. There's no such thing as for us, if I'm sitting in this table, it's because somebody lent me a hand in the past. And so continue to do that and remember that throughout your career, right? And so again, it's just being active and being there.
Yeah, and I would agree with all of the above. It's being present and leading by example and just be visible, right? If there is leaders, business owners around the Charlotte area that want to be more inclusive, serve better, participate, get engaged, and lead by example.
And certainly get involved in ALPFA.
Preferably.
Yes.
As a sponsor, yes. Well, this has been a really rich conversation. I appreciate all of you for your leadership in our community, the work you're doing through ALPFA, your time today. And I trust that those that listen to this podcast, that are business owners and entrepreneurs, will have a better idea both of the size and impact of the Latinx community here right in Charlotte, North Carolina area, and also ways to connect and get involved in the community and support the community's growth and success. So thank you so much for all you do and are doing. And thank you for being a part of Winning Through Culture today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Gracias.
Well, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Winning Through Culture. I really appreciate the time we've had here with the ALPFA board members today. I want to encourage everybody listening to this podcast. We'll have in the show notes a link to the ALPFA Charlotte chapter and ALPFA International, but please go check out their website for the ALPFA Charlotte chapter. Look at the events that are on that website and go meet them. Go attend some of their events and learn more about the organization. They've shared some great stories today, and really appreciate their time with us today to help our listeners, business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders be more impactful and relevant in their business, and specifically in the Latinx community here in the Greater Carolinas. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Winning Through Culture. Be well and be relevant and impactful.